The back room of Volkov's restaurant was no place for children. Cigar smoke hung thick in the air, curling around the crystal chandeliers like gray ghosts. 6 men sat around a mahogany table littered with whiskey glasses and the remains of a 5-course meal, their voices low and dangerous as they discussed territories, shipments, and the bodies that would need to disappear before morning. At the head of the table sat Nikolai Volkov. He was a man built for violence. Broad shoulders, hands that had broken bones and never trembled, a jaw that looked like it had been carved from Siberian granite. His eyes were the color of a winter sky, pale and cold and utterly without mercy. At 34, he controlled more of this city than the mayor, the police commissioner, and the governor combined. His name was whispered in fear from the dockyards to the penthouse suites. No one interrupted Nikolai Volkov. No one dared. Which was why every man at the table went silent when the door creaked open and a little girl walked in. She was 7, maybe 8 years old. Brown hair pulled into messy pigtails, a faded pink coat 2 sizes too big, the sleeves rolled up past her wrists. Sneakers with holes near the toes and laces that didn't match. She clutched something in her small fist, something that glinted under the chandelier light. For a moment, no one moved. The guards at the door exchanged panicked glances, reaching for their weapons, unsure whether this was a trick, a trap, a distraction before an ambush. "Stop." Nikolai's voice cut through the tension like a blade. He raised one hand and the guards froze. His pale eyes fixed on the child with an expression no one at that table had ever seen before. The little girl didn't flinch. She walked straight toward him, her sneakers squeaking against the hardwood floor, her chin lifted with a courage that would have been impressive in a grown man. She stopped at the edge of the table, barely tall enough to see over it, and met his gaze without blinking. "Are you the king?" she asked. A ripple of disbelief passed through the room. One of the men let out a sharp laugh, quickly silenced by a look from Nikolai. "Who told you I was a king?" His voice was quiet, controlled. But something had shifted in his eyes, something that made the men around him uneasy. "The people on the street." The girl's voice was high and clear, unwavering. "They said you're the king of the city. They said you can do anything. They said everyone's scared of you. And you're not scared?" She considered this for a moment. "A little bit," she admitted. "But my sister says being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the scary thing anyway." Nikolai leaned forward. The movement made 2 of his lieutenants tense, hands drifting toward concealed weapons. But he ignored them, his attention wholly fixed on this strange, fearless child. "What's your name?" "Lily. Lily Marchetti." "And why are you here, Lily Marchetti?" The girl uncurled her fist. In her palm lay a crumpled dollar bill and a handful of coins, quarters, dimes, nickels, a few pennies. She placed them carefully on the table in front of him, smoothing the dollar flat with her small fingers. "This is all my money," she said, "from my piggy bank. I know it's not a lot, but I need to hire you." The silence that followed was absolute. Nikolai stared at the money. $1.63, arranged in a neat pile on a table where deals worth millions were made and broken. His jaw tightened. A muscle flickered beneath his eye. "Hire me," he repeated. "For what?" Lily took a deep breath. Her lower lip trembled just once before she pressed it firm. "There are bad men looking for my sister. They come to our apartment at night and bang on the door. They say she owes them money. They say if she doesn't pay, they're going to hurt her." Her voice cracked, but she pushed on. "My sister works all the time. She's a nurse. She takes care of sick people, and she takes care of me, and she never sleeps, and I hear her crying when she thinks I'm asleep." She looked up at Nikolai, and her eyes, brown and wide and filled with a desperate hope, glistened with unshed tears. I don't want them to hurt my sister. She's all I have. Our mom died and our dad's gone, and it's just us. A single tear escaped, tracking down her cheek. Please, I know it's not enough money, but I'll do chores, I'll clean, I'll do whatever you want. Just please, please make the bad men go away. No one at that table breathed. Nikolai Volkov had heard pleas before. He had heard men beg for their lives, for their families, for mercy that would never come. He had listened to their desperate bargaining with a heart of stone and made his decisions based on power, profit, and the cold calculus of survival. But this was something else. He looked at the little girl standing before him, the too big coat, the mismatched laces, the courage that burned in her eyes even as tears spilled down her cheeks. And somewhere deep inside him, in a place he had buried so long ago he'd forgotten it existed, something cracked. Anya. The name surfaced unbidden. His baby sister. 6 years old the last time he'd seen her, with the same brown pigtails, the same fierce spirit. She had believed he could protect her from anything. And he had failed. The men who killed her had never been found. Not by the police. Not by anyone. Until Nikolai found them himself 10 years later and showed them what happened to people who hurt little girls. He had built an empire on that rage, had become the monster that other monsters feared, and he had sworn in the blood of his enemies that no child would ever suffer the way Anya had suffered. Not while he drew breath. What's your sister's name? His voice came out rough, unfamiliar. Serafina, but everyone calls her Sarah. And these men who come to your door, do you know who they are? Lily shook her head. They wear black. They have a tattoo. She touched her neck, just below her ear. Here, like a snake. Nikolai's expression didn't change, but his hands curled into fists beneath the table. The Serrano crew. Low-level thugs who ran protection rackets in the poorer neighborhoods, preying on people too vulnerable to fight back. He had tolerated their existence because they stayed out of his territory. That tolerance had just ended. He reached across the table and picked up the crumpled dollar bill. Lily watched him, her breath held, her small body trembling with hope and fear. Nikolai folded the bill carefully and slipped it into his breast pocket, right over his heart. I accept your payment, he said. The contract is made. Lily's eyes went wide. Really? A Volkov never breaks a deal. He stood, and the men around the table scrambled to their feet. Victor, bring the car around. We're taking Miss Marchetti home. He looked down at the child, and something almost like warmth flickered in those cold eyes. And I very much want to meet this sister of yours. Serafina Marchetti was 23 years old, and she had not slept in 4 days. She stood at the trauma bay doors of St. Michael's Hospital, stripping off blood-soaked gloves, her scrubs stained with the evidence of a 12-hour shift that had included 2 gunshot wounds, a car accident, and a little boy who had fallen from a 4th-floor window. The boy had lived. That was something. Some nights, that was everything. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. She pulled it out, expecting another call from the landlord about rent she didn't have. Instead, she saw 17 missed calls from Mrs. Patterson, the elderly neighbor who watched Lily when Sarah worked nights. Her blood turned to ice. She was calling back before she'd even processed the movement, her fingers clumsy on the screen, her heart slamming against her ribs. Mrs. Patterson, what happened? Is Lily? She's gone. The old woman's voice was thin with panic. I checked on her an hour ago and she was asleep. I swear she was asleep, but I just went in to check again and the window was open and she's gone. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I don't know how... Sarah didn't hear the rest. She was already running. The subway took too long. The streets were too crowded. By the time she burst through the door of her apartment building, she was gasping for air, her lungs burning, her mind spinning through every terrible possibility. The men who had been coming around, the threats, the promises of what they would do if she didn't pay her mother's debts. Lily, Lily, Lily. She took the stairs two at a time, crashed through her apartment door, and stopped dead. Lily sat at the kitchen table, a glass of milk in front of her, chattering happily to a man who occupied Sarah's chair like it was a throne. He was enormous. That was her first thought. Broad and powerful, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than a year of her salary. His hair was dark, cropped short, and his eyes, pale blue, almost colorless, lifted to meet hers with an expression of calm appraisal. Two other men stood by the window, watching her with the flat, professional gaze of bodyguards. Sarah! Lily bounced in her seat. This is Mr. Nikolai. He's going to help us with the bad men. I hired him. Sarah couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her eyes darted from her sister to the stranger to the men by the window, calculating distances, exits, weapons. The kitchen knives were in the drawer behind him. Too far. The fire escape was through the bedroom. She'd have to get Lily first. Miss Marchetti. The man, Nikolai, rose to his feet. He moved with a grace that belied his size, fluid and controlled. Please, sit down. We have much to discuss. Get away from my sister. The words came out sharper than she intended. One of the men by the window shifted, his hand moving toward his jacket. Nikolai stopped him with a glance. Your sister came to me, he said. His voice was deep, accented, Russian, she thought, though softened by years in America. She walked into my restaurant, placed her life savings on my table, and asked me to protect you. That kind of courage deserves respect. She's 7 years old. She doesn't know what she knows exactly what she did. Nikolai's eyes held hers, and something in their pale depths made her fall silent. She loves you. She's terrified of losing you, and she was brave enough to seek help in a place where grown men fear to tread. Sarah's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs, willing herself to stay calm. What do you want? The men threatening you. The ones with the snake tattoos. He tilted his head slightly. They work for a crew called the Serranos. Your mother owed them money. Yes? Sarah flinched. The debt. Always the debt. Her mother had been desperate after their father left, desperate enough to borrow from the wrong people, desperate enough to dig a hole so deep that even death hadn't freed them from it. I've been paying them back, every month, everything I can spare. And yet, they keep coming. The interest, her voice cracked. It keeps growing. No matter how much I pay, it's never enough. Nikolai nodded slowly. The Serranos are parasites. They prey on people like you. Hardworking, honest, too proud to ask for help. He paused. That ends tonight. Sarah stared at him. Why? Why would you help us? You don't know us. You don't owe us anything. Your sister paid me. A flicker of something. Amusement? Warmth? Crossed his face. A Volkov always honors his contracts. That's not a real answer. The amusement faded. For a long moment he simply looked at her. Really looked. In a way that made her feel exposed. Seen. Stripped down to the bone. I had a sister once, he said quietly. She was 6 years old. She believed I could protect her from anything. His jaw tightened. I couldn't. And I've spent the last 20 years making sure no one else fails the way I did. The words hung in the air between them. Sarah felt something shift in her chest. A crack in the wall of fear and suspicion she'd built around herself. I'm going to make the Serranos disappear, Nikolai continued. The debt dies with them. You and Lily will be safe. He reached into his jacket and Sarah tensed. But he only pulled out a card. Heavy cream stock, embossed with an address. But I need something from you in return. Her stomach dropped. Here it was. The catch. The price. I'm not. I won't. You're a trauma nurse. He cut her off, his voice flat. One of the best at St. Michael's, according to my sources. In my line of work, people get hurt. Doctors ask questions. Hospitals file reports. He held out the card. I need someone who can handle emergencies. Discreetly. Someone I can trust. You don't even know me. I know you've worked double shifts for 18 months to pay off a dead woman's debt. I know you've kept your sister fed, clothed, and loved while the world tried to crush you. I know that when you walked through that door, your first thought wasn't for yourself, it was for her. His pale eyes burned into hers. That's enough. Sarah looked at the card in his hand, then at Lily, who was watching her with wide, hopeful eyes, then back at the man who had walked into her life like a hurricane and offered her the one thing she hadn't dared to hope for: safety. If I say no, then I still deal with the Serranos. You owe me nothing. He paused. But you'll never see me again. And the next time trouble finds you, and it will, you'll face it alone. She thought of the sleepless nights, the pounding on the door, the terror in Lily's eyes when she asked why the bad men kept coming back. She took the card. When do I start? The Serranos disappeared 3 days later. Sarah didn't ask how. Didn't ask where. She saw the news report. A warehouse fire on the south side, several bodies found inside, investigation ongoing. And she knew. She knew. And she told herself it didn't matter. These were men who had terrorized her family, who had promised to hurt Lily if she didn't pay, who had made her life a waking nightmare for 18 months. She couldn't mourn them. She wouldn't. But she did lie awake that night, staring at the ceiling of her new bedroom in Nikolai Volkov's penthouse, wondering what kind of woman that made her. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building in the most exclusive part of the city. Sarah's apartment could have fit inside the living room. Twice. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings so high they made her dizzy. The kitchen was stocked with food she couldn't pronounce, wine that cost more than her monthly salary, appliances she didn't know how to use. And Lily thought she had died and gone to heaven. Sarah, look. Her sister's voice echoed through the marble halls on their second morning. There's a pool, inside the house, and Mr. Nikolai says I can use it whenever I want. Sarah found them in the indoor pool room, Lily splashing in the shallow end in a brand new swimsuit, and Nikolai sitting on the edge in his shirt sleeves, his suit jacket discarded, his pant legs rolled up, his bare feet dangling in the water. The sight stopped her cold. He looked different, younger somehow. The hard lines of his face had softened as he watched Lily swim, and there was something in his pale eyes that looked almost like peace. When Lily splashed him, he didn't flinch. When she demanded he watch her do a handstand, he gave her his full attention, as grave and focused as if she were presenting a business proposal. Your form is improving, he said seriously, but your legs need to be straighter. Like this? Lily tried again, her legs wobbling. Better. Again. Sarah leaned against the doorframe, her arms crossed, watching this strange, impossible scene. The most dangerous man in the city, giving swimming lessons to a 7-year-old girl. She has him wrapped around her finger. Sarah jumped. A woman had appeared beside her, middle-aged, sharp-eyed, with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. She recognized her from the household staff. Irina, the head housekeeper. He doesn't let anyone see him like this, Irina continued, her voice low. Not since his sister died. But that little girl of yours. She shook her head slowly. She's brought something back to life in him. Something I thought was gone forever. Sarah didn't know what to say. so she said nothing, and watched Nikolai teach her sister to float on her back, his large hand steady beneath her small shoulders. Over the following weeks, Sarah learned the rhythms of Nikolai's world. She set up a medical suite in a room off the main hallway, well-stocked, well-equipped, better than some emergency rooms she'd worked in. She treated knife wounds and gunshot grazes, broken knuckles and cracked ribs. The men who came to her were guarded at first, suspicious of this outsider in their midst. But she was good at her job, calm under pressure, skilled with her hands, unflinching at the sight of blood, and slowly, grudgingly, they began to trust her. She saw Nikolai every day, sometimes in passing, a nod in the hallway, a brief exchange about Lily's schoolwork or an upcoming procedure. Sometimes for longer, when he would appear in her medical suite at odd hours, checking on his men, asking questions about their recovery. And sometimes, late at night, when the penthouse was quiet and Lily was asleep, she would find him in the library. He read voraciously, history, philosophy, poetry. Not what she had expected from a man who built his empire on violence. The first time she'd wandered in, unable to sleep, he'd looked up from a volume of Dostoevsky and offered her a glass of whiskey without a word. They talked that night. About books, about the city, about nothing and everything. She learned that he had come to America at 14, alone, with nothing but the clothes on his back and a burning need to survive. She learned that he had built his organization from the ground up, brick by bloody brick. She learned that he visited his sister's grave every Sunday, rain or shine, and left white roses because they had been her favorite. She did not learn why his eyes sometimes went distant when he looked at Lily, or why his voice sometimes cracked when he said her name. But she could guess, and it broke her heart in ways she didn't want to examine. "You're staring again." Sarah blinked. They were in the library, 6 weeks into her time at the penthouse. Nikolai sat across from her, a book open in his lap, one eyebrow raised in what might have been amusement. "Sorry." Heat flooded her cheeks. "I was thinking." "About what?" "About how you're not what I expected. About how you look at my sister like she's made of glass. About how I can't stop noticing the way your hands move when you turn a page. About how strange this all is," she said instead. 6 weeks ago, I was working double shifts just to keep the lights on. Now I'm living in a penthouse, treating gunshot wounds and watching you teach my sister to play chess. She's a quick learner. The corner of his mouth twitched. She beat Victor yesterday. He's still sulking. Sarah laughed. A real laugh, surprised out of her. Nikolai's eyes warmed at the sound, and something passed between them. Something fragile and new and terrifying. Then his phone buzzed, and the warmth vanished. She watched his face as he read the message, watched the softness harden into stone, the pale eyes go cold. "What is it?" "Business." He stood abruptly. "I need to go." Nikolai dash dash. "Stay inside tonight. Both of you." He paused at the door, his back to her. "Promise me." The urgency in his voice sent ice down her spine. "I promise. But tell me what's—" "Promise me, Sarah." She had never heard him say her name like that before. Like it was a prayer. Like it was the last word he might ever speak. "I promise," she whispered. He was gone before she could ask anything else. The explosion came at midnight. Sarah was in her room, unable to sleep, when the windows rattled and the night sky lit up orange. She ran to the glass and saw flames rising from a building 3 blocks away, one of Nikolai's warehouses, she realized. She had treated a man who worked there just last week. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. "Miss Marchetti." The voice was male, unfamiliar, smooth as oil. "We haven't met, but I know a great deal about you. And your charming little sister." Sarah's blood turned to ice. "Who is this?" A friend of the late Serrano brothers. They owed me money, you see. Quite a lot of money. And when your Mr. Volkov burned them alive, he burned my investment with them. A soft laugh. So now I'm going to take something from him, something he's grown rather attached to. If you touch my sister. Oh, not the little one. Not yet. The voice dropped lower. You, Miss Marchetti, you're going to come to me. Alone. Tonight. Or tomorrow morning, your sister wakes up to find pieces of you on her pillow. Sarah couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. There's a car waiting outside the service entrance. You have 5 minutes. Tell anyone, and the girl dies first. The line went dead. Sarah stood frozen, her phone clutched in her trembling hand. She thought of Lily, asleep down the hall, safe and warm and dreaming of swimming pools and chess games. She thought of Nikolai, somewhere in the burning night, fighting a war she didn't understand. She thought of the promise she had made. Stay inside, both of you. She had 4 minutes left. Sarah grabbed her coat and walked out the door. The car took her to the docks. Sarah had known fear before. She had held dying patients in her arms, had watched the light fade from their eyes, had delivered news that shattered families. She had lived with terror for 18 months while men pounded on her door and threatened to take everything she loved. But this was different. This was walking into the dark with her eyes wide open, knowing she might never walk out. The warehouse loomed before her, rusted and abandoned, the river black and churning behind it. 2 men flanked the entrance, their faces hidden in shadow. They didn't speak as they led her inside, through corridors that stank of salt and rot, until they reached a room lit by a single bare bulb. A man sat waiting for her. He was older than she expected, 50, maybe 60, with silver hair slicked back from a face that might have been handsome once, before cruelty carved its lines too deep. His suit was expensive, his shoes polished to a mirror shine. He smiled when he saw her, and the expression made her skin crawl. Miss Marchetti. He gestured to a chair across from him. Please, sit. I'd rather stand. His smile didn't waver. As you wish. He steepled his fingers beneath his chin. My name is Alexander Morozov. I was a business partner of the Serrano brothers, the men your Mr. Volkov so thoughtlessly incinerated. They owed me a great deal of money. Money I now have no way to collect. That's not my problem. No. But you're the reason they're dead, aren't you? He tilted his head. A little girl walks into Volkov's restaurant, begs him to save her sister, and suddenly he's burning down warehouses and making enemies he can't afford. His eyes glittered. You've made yourself very valuable, Miss Marchetti. Valuable enough to kill for. Valuable enough to die for. Sarah's hands were trembling. She clasped them behind her back so he wouldn't see. What do you want? I want Nikolai Volkov to suffer. Morozov's voice hardened. He took something from me. Now I'm going to take something from him. Something he'll never get back. He nodded to one of his men, and Sarah felt rough hands grab her arms, force her into the chair, bind her wrists to the armrests with zip ties that bit into her skin. When he finds your body, Morozov said softly, he'll know what it costs to cross me. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. Her breath came in short, shallow gasps. But beneath the fear, something else was rising. Something hot and fierce and furious. She thought of Lily, waking up to find her gone. Thought of the promise she had made to protect her sister, no matter what. Thought of Nikolai, who had lost one girl he loved and was about to lose another. Number. You're making a mistake, she said. Her voice shook, but she forced the words out. Nikolai Volkov doesn't negotiate, he doesn't bargain, he destroys. And when he finds out what you've done, he won't find out until it's too late. You're wrong. Morozov raised an eyebrow. Am I? He knew something was coming. That's why he told me to stay inside. Sarah met his gaze, willing herself not to blink. He's not stupid, and he's not alone. Right now, his men are tearing this city apart looking for me, and when they find me, when he finds me, he won't. He will. She leaned forward as far as her bonds would allow. Because he made a promise to a 7-year-old girl, and Nikolai Volkov never breaks his promises. For the first time, something flickered in Morozov's eyes. Doubt, maybe, or fear. Then the lights went out. The darkness was absolute, thick and heavy, swallowing everything. Sarah heard shouts, the crash of breaking glass, the sharp crack of gunfire. She threw herself sideways, chair and all, hitting the concrete floor hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. More shots. A scream. The wet thud of a body falling. Then silence. Footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. A flashlight clicked on, and Sarah squinted against the sudden glare. Nikolai Volkov stood over her, his face splattered with blood that wasn't his own, a gun in his hand, and murder in his pale eyes. Sarah. Her name came out broken, ragged. He dropped to his knees beside her, and his hands, those hands that had killed men just moments ago, were impossibly gentle as he cut through the zip ties, as he helped her sit up, as he cradled her face between his palms. Are you hurt? Did he touch you? I swear to God if he... I'm okay. Her voice cracked. Nikolai, I'm okay. He pulled her against his chest, and she felt him shaking. This man who commanded armies, who ruled an empire, who had never shown weakness to anyone, he was shaking. I thought I lost you. The words were muffled against her hair. When I came back and you were gone, when Victor found the note, his arms tightened around her. I thought I lost you. I had to. Tears spilled down her cheeks, soaking into his blood-stained shirt. He said he would hurt Lily. He said, I know, I know. He pulled back just enough to look at her, and the expression on his face stole her breath. Raw, open, vulnerable in a way she had never seen. But you should have told me. You should have trusted me. There wasn't time. There's always time. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, wiping away tears. Don't you understand? I can't lose you, Sarah. Not you. Not Lily. Not again. Behind them, the warehouse was chaos, Nikolai's men securing the exits, dragging Morozov's surviving thugs into the light. But Sarah barely noticed. She could only see him, only feel his hands on her face, his breath warm against her skin. Nikolai. I've spent 20 years building walls. His voice was hoarse. 20 years making sure no one could ever hurt me again. And then you walked into my life. You and that brave, impossible little sister of yours, and you tore them all down. I didn't mean to. I know. He almost smiled. That's what makes it real. He kissed her then. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was fierce and desperate, and full of everything he couldn't say. The fear, the fury, the love that had been building since the moment a 7-year-old girl placed $1 on his table and asked him to save her sister. Sarah kissed him back, her fingers tangling in his hair, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. She tasted blood and salt, and something like hope. When they finally broke apart, his forehead rested against hers, both of them breathing hard. Morozov, she whispered. Is he being dealt with? His jaw tightened. He'll never threaten anyone again. She should have felt something. Horror, maybe, or guilt. But all she felt was relief. Relief and a fierce, burning gratitude for this man who had walked through fire to find her. Take me home, she said. Please, I need to see Lily. Nikolai rose, pulling her up with him. He kept one arm wrapped around her waist, holding her close as if he was afraid she might disappear if he let go. "Victor," he called, "bring the car around." As they walked out of the warehouse, stepping over bodies and broken glass, Sarah looked up at the man beside her. His face was hard again, the mask back in place. But his hand, wrapped around hers, was warm and steady. And she knew with a certainty that went bone deep that she would never be alone again. 8 months later, Sarah stood on the balcony of the penthouse and watched Lily blow out 9 candles on a cake shaped like a mermaid. The rooftop had been transformed for the occasion. Pink streamers, silver balloons, a bounce house that had required 4 of Nikolai's men to assemble while he supervised with the intensity of a general planning a military campaign. 12 of Lily's classmates shrieked and laughed and chased each other through the afternoon sunshine, sticky with frosting and drunk on sugar. It was, Lily had declared, the best birthday ever. Sarah felt arms wrap around her waist from behind, a solid chest pressing against her back. "She's happy." Nikolai's voice was warm against her ear. "She's spoiled." But Sarah was smiling. "A bounce house and a pony ride? You know she's going to expect a circus next year." "Then I'll get her a circus." Sarah laughed and turned in his arms to face him. He looked different these days. Softer somehow. The sharp edges were still there, the danger that lived beneath his skin. But his smiles came easier now. His laughter, once rare as a solar eclipse, had become almost common. Lily had done that. Lily, with her boundless joy and her fearless love, had cracked him open and let the light pour in. But Sarah had done something too. She saw it in the way he looked at her, like she was something precious, something worth protecting, something he had never dared to hope for. "I have something for you," he said. "It's not my birthday." "I know." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Not velvet, wooden, old and worn, with something etched into the lid. Sarah looked closer and realized it was a name. Anya. Her breath caught. "This belonged to my sister," Nikolai said quietly. "She kept her treasures in it. Seashells, pretty rocks, a lock of our mother's hair." He opened the box, and inside, nestled against faded blue silk, lay a ring. Simple, elegant. A single diamond set in a band of white gold, surrounded by tiny sapphires the color of a winter sky. "It was my grandmother's," he continued. "She gave it to my mother on her wedding day. My mother gave it to Anya, to keep safe until she was old enough to wear it." His voice roughened. "Anya never got the chance, but I think she would have wanted you to have it." Sarah couldn't speak. Tears blurred her vision, turning the ring into a glittering star. "I never thought I would feel this again." Nikolai's pale eyes were bright, his voice barely above a whisper. "After Anya died, I buried everything, every soft feeling, every hope. I told myself it was safer that way, that loving someone only gave the world another weapon to use against you." He took the ring from the box and held it between them. "And then, a little girl walked into my restaurant with $1 in her hand and courage in her heart. And she led me to you." He swallowed hard. "You've saved my men's lives. You've made my house a home. You've given me something I never thought I'd have again. A family." "Nikolai, I love you, Sarah." The words came out raw, unpolished, more honest than anything she'd ever heard him say. "I love your strength and your kindness and the way you refuse to back down, even when you're terrified. I love that you walked into a warehouse full of killers to protect your sister. I love that you see the man I could be, not just the monster I've been." He sank to one knee. "I can't promise you a normal life. I can't promise you safety or peace or any of the things you deserve. But I can promise you this. I will spend every day of my life protecting you, fighting for you, loving you and Lily with everything I have." His hand trembled as he held the ring up to her. "Serafina Marchetti, will you marry me?" Sarah thought of the girl she had been 8 months ago, exhausted, afraid, drowning in debt and despair, clinging to hope by her fingernails. She thought of the night Lily had disappeared and the terror that had consumed her. She thought of walking through that door and finding a monster, only to discover, beneath the blood and the danger and the cold, pale eyes, a man who had been waiting his whole life to love someone. Yes, she whispered. His face transformed. The hope, the fear, the desperate love, all of it melted into something radiant. Something that made him look, for just a moment, like the boy he must have been before the world taught him to be hard. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then he was on his feet, lifting her off the ground, spinning her in his arms while she laughed and cried and held on tight. When he kissed her, she tasted joy and salt, and forever. Sierra's gonna be my sister for real. They broke apart to find Lily racing toward them, cake smeared across her cheeks, her eyes wide with delight. She launched herself at Nikolai's legs and he caught her easily, hoisting her up between them. "Does this mean I can call you Dad?" Lily asked. Something broke open in Nikolai's face. Something ancient and wounded and finally healing. "Only if you want to," he said softly. "I want to." Lily threw her arms around his neck. "I wanted to forever ago. I was just waiting for you to catch up." Sarah laughed through her tears, watching the two people she loved most in the world hold each other, the Mafia boss and the little girl who had bought his protection for $1. The monster who had become a man. The family she had never expected to find. She thought about destiny, about the strange, winding paths that led people to each other, about a 7-year-old girl brave enough to walk into a den of wolves and ask for help. Some people waited their whole lives for a miracle. Sarah's miracle had cost exactly $1.63, and it was worth more than all the money in the world. That night, after the guests had gone and Lily had fallen asleep clutching her new stuffed mermaid, Sarah and Nikolai stood on the balcony together, watching the city lights glitter below. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For answering the door that night. For taking a contract from a little girl. For giving us a home." She leaned into him, feeling his arm tighten around her. "For loving us." Nikolai pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Thank you for letting me," he murmured. "Thank you for being brave enough to stay." Sarah smiled and closed her eyes, listening to the steady beat of his heart. She had walked into the wolves' den looking for salvation. She had found something better. She had found home. Thank you all for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please write in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, as your support is essential for me to continue creating content like this.